violent. Had they confronted the wrong person, had they attempted to rob, assault, or run someone down who chose to defend themselves, this situation could have ended in gunfire. And then we would be having a very different conversation today. Instead, our officers intervened, they stopped the threat, and they did so without serious injury to students, officers, or members of the public. Now, let me walk you through what occurred. At 6:46 a.m., robbery and aggravated battery. Behind the BP gas station at Knoxville and Archer, masked individuals exited stolen vehicles and violently assaulted a 15-year-old juvenile. The victim was beaten, stomped, robbed of a phone and a hoodie, and briefly lost consciousness. He was transported to OSF, treated, and released. This was a coordinated attack. At 7:13 a.m. at Central High School, officers were dispatched to Central High for a black Jeep doing donuts during school arrival. During that time, a 14-year-old juvenile exiting a school bus was targeted. The Jeep left the roadway and intentionally attempted to strike him. The juvenile ran inside the school for safety. At 7:24 a.m., Richwoods High School, the same vehicle drove onto the front lawn at Richwoods High School while students were present. Between 7:30 and 8:06 a.m. is the citywide escalation I think everybody's seen on video. The Jeep was then observed driving recklessly throughout the city of Peoria, running motorists off the roadway, driving at excessive speeds, driving the wrong way, throwing objects at squad cars, including dumbbells, attempting to ram police vehicles, swerving intentionally towards officers. This was not reckless driving alone. This was a vehicle being used as a weapon. At approximately 8:06 a.m., stop sticks were deployed at Main and University. The vehicle was disabled and all occupants were taken into custody. Given the conduct displayed, the fact that no one was seriously injured is significant. Before I move on to the individuals arrested, I want to address something else directly. The Peoria Police Department has a pursuit policy. It is structured, it is deliberate, and grounded in public safety. We do not pursue recklessly. We pursue when the totality of the circumstances justifies intervention to prevent greater harm. It was clear from the behavior displayed that the occupants of this vehicle did not believe we would pursue them. In fact, as one of the individuals was being taken into custody, he told an officer, "You can't pursue us." Yesterday, they learned otherwise. They messed around and they found out. When a vehicle is being driven recklessly at officers, at motorists, and through school zones during arrival time, that is not simply a traffic offense. That is a direct threat to human life. We will not tolerate anyone using a vehicle as a weapon in this community. Our officers acted within policy, they acted decisively, and they stopped a dangerous situation before it became a tragedy. So let's move on to the individuals that were arrested. We have two adults. First adult, Davier L. Dillard, 18 years old. 18 years old. 21 prior arrests, 36 prior offenses. Mind you, that's just in Peoria, that we can confirm just in Peoria. His history includes multiple stolen motor vehicle cases, domestic battery, aggravated battery, including against police, resisting and obstructing, mob action, burglary, and threatening a public official. You should also know that we've been in direct contact with the state's attorney's office, and we're working hand in hand with them for the charges that they now have, and possibly more charges that are coming. But the current charges that are included currently are possession of stolen motor vehicle, multiple counts, aggravated assault, criminal damage to state-supported property, aggravated fleeing and eluding, aggravated assault on police, 3 counts, reckless conduct, endangering the life and health of a child, 4 counts, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, 4 counts, robbery, mob action, aggravated battery, theft, possession of a controlled substance, and if that's not enough, 41 Illinois Vehicle Code violations. In simple terms, 41 citations were issued. The next adult, Quinzel Ford, 18 years old. He's only had 1 prior arrest. His current charges are very similar: possession of stolen motor vehicle, robbery, mob action, aggravated battery, theft, endangering the life and health of a child, 4 counts, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, 4 counts. On to the juveniles that were charged. First juvenile, 16 years old with 1 prior arrest with 3 offenses: obstructing, resisting, criminal trespass to property, and criminal damage to property. The next juvenile, 15 years old, no prior arrest. The next juvenile, 15 years old with 8 prior arrests, 15 offenses, including firearm offenses, assault on police offenses, possession of stolen motor vehicle. And the last juvenile, who's 13 years old with 6 prior arrests, 18 offenses, including mob action, wood injury, obstructing, resisting, and stolen motor vehicle cases. All of them face current charges that include stolen motor vehicle offenses, robbery, mob action, aggravated battery, and related offenses. This incident yesterday involved targeted violence, stolen vehicles, assaults near schools during arrival time, and direct aggression towards police officers. When we see juveniles with repeated arrests for violence, stolen vehicles, weapon offenses, and assault on police, and they return to the streets, escalating their behavior, something in the system is not working. When we look at an individual like Davy R. Dillard, with 21, let that sink in, 21 prior arrests, 36 prior offenses, we're not looking at a one-time mistake. We're looking at a progression, an escalation. We are now watching that progression move from the juvenile system into the adult criminal justice system. That is what happens when there are repeat contacts without meaningful interruption of behavior. At some point, early intervention either occurs or escalation becomes unavoidable. And while I will not discuss personal family matters, I will say this. In many of these cases, patterns of behavior are not hidden. They are visible, they are public, they are posted, and they are known. When warning signs are repeatedly ignored, whether by the system or at home, the outcome is not surprising, it's predictable. And predictable escalation is preventable if accountability and engagement occur early enough. Now, I'm going to give another point here, but I want to be absolutely clear on this, media, so please get this one correct. Not that you don't get the other stuff correct, but please get this one correct. This is not about assigning blame to our state's attorney's office, our judges, our juvenile detention professionals. They operate within the framework of the law as it currently exists. The challenge is structural, not personal. When repeat violent juvenile behavior continues with limited tools for sustained intervention, it suggests that the statutory framework may no longer reflect the realities our communities are facing currently. When minors are committing violent crimes before sunrise in stolen cars, that reflects a breakdown in supervision and involvement at home. And for those who believe parental complacency is not part of the issue, consider this. Some of the individuals arrested routinely post videos of themselves on social media, driving recklessly, operating stolen vehicles, and engaging in criminal behavior, often broadcasting it live. In many cases, their own parents are connected to those accounts. They can see what's being posted. So the question becomes, are they not paying attention? Do they not grasp the seriousness? Or has dangerous behavior become normalized? Whatever the reason, there is a clear disconnect between what is happening in the streets and what is happening at home. Law enforcement cannot close the gap alone. Without meaningful consequences, engaged parenting, and really important, a modernized juvenile justice framework that reflects today's realities, we will continue this cycle repeat itself. If anyone has any additional information, video footage, or recordings related to yesterday's incidents, whether from personal devices, business cameras, or social media, we ask that you come forward and share that information with investigators. The community does not need to be or stay silent on this. Public safety is a shared responsibility, and additional evidence helps ensure full accountability. The investigation remains ongoing. And before I finish, I also want to make sure that I thank the state's attorney's office, our detectives, our Greater Peoria Auto Crimes Task Force, the officers that arrived on scene, from our SWAT officer, every officer that was available was out there. Everybody did a phenomenal job. The teamwork that was displayed, the professionalism, the restraint that was shown by our officers out on the scene is to be commended. And it does not go unnoticed by me or our community members. So I want to make that public. Again, I want to thank them. The countless hours that our officers, our detectives, spend behind the scenes putting these cases together. I think the last detective I saw here was probably at 10 o'clock, and I left a little bit earlier. And I know there was people here past midnight last night, so thank you. And they're still working on stuff behind the scenes. So there's a lot of work behind this. So I'll take a few questions if I didn't answer them already.
What exact reforms would you like to see done in the juvenile justice system? Because you've been talking about this for a long time now. What exactly do you want to see done?
Well, we put together a list, and that list has been shared at the legislative breakfast and has been given to the legislators. I'll forward you that list. That's a whole nother press conference with the list of changes that we need to see, but we need to see parental accountability in there. We need to see where violent offenders, and when I talk about violent offenders, we have juveniles. We have, 12,000 approximately students in our school district. I should also say thank you to our school district, right? Before I go on, it reminds me of the video footages. They spent hours pulling videos for our detectives yesterday. So thank you to them for their help as well. But we have 12,000 students in our school, approximately. Less than 1% of those kids are the ones causing the problem for us. I'm going to name one of them today. There used to be a juvenile. There needs to be a parental accountability. There needs to be a timeout period where kids can get the help that they need, because the turnaround, the revolving door that we continue to see of these kids coming back out without enough time for them to be rehabbed, without enough time to get the family the help they need to help that juvenile when they come out. The system's broken. So there's a lot, and I can share all that information with you offline. I have that all written up. I'll give it to you.
Chief, right over here. You mentioned that some of the priors that they had included like mob action. We've seen that there was an increase in targeted attacks here in Peoria over year. Do you think that this increase in mob action and targeted attacks kind of work together? Is there an increase in gang violence?
You know, you guys always ask this gang question. You know, by definition, are we seeing gang activity? I think by definition, you could say yes, right? But there's no structure. I keep saying this. There's no structure. We have juveniles who are just going out to be violent and terrorize our community, point blank. I think you've seen some of the videos. You've probably seen the videos outside of Richwood High School, or where they're driving around chasing people in the car right in front of the school. There's no rhyme or reason. They're stealing cars. They're committing violence just to commit violence. Now, are there rivals between different groups within the city? Absolutely. So I think by definition, could you say there's a rivalry, and could it be gang affiliated by definition? Yes, but the structure that us that have been in law enforcement a long time and understand the structure of what gangs look like, that structure doesn't exist, if that makes sense.
It feels like, apologies if this is exaggerating, but it feels like every 6 months we're back here again where you're calling out parents, you're blasting juveniles in the justice system. I know you've had programs where you had the stand-up, show-up program. Are things like that working? And if not, what does the message need to be? Does it need to be intensified?
Well, what I think needs to happen is legislation needs to change. I think I've been very clear on that. Legislation needs to change. And I think when the community gets tired and they decide to stand up and push our legislators to get legislation changed, that's when we'll see it, right? We have issues with the Safety Act that people have complained about. We have issues with the Juvenile Justice Act of 1987. We're in 2026. There's issues there. We need to modernize some of these things, and we need to put the right tools in law enforcement's hands and the judicial system's hands to see detainments longer, to see the restorative measures that need to work have more time. We're not seeing that. You can't bring somebody in the front door and out the back door and think the problem has been solved.
So if you want the community to speak up more of their legislators, how do you want them to do that? How should they do that?
Well, I'm gonna leave that up to them. That's not my job to explain to our community what they need to do with their legislators. I'm not the politician. I'm the chief of police, and I'm gonna stick in that role. But they should know how to contact their legislators and reach out to them, and let's start getting the ball moving on some of this legislation that needs to change. And until the community is completely tired, we may not see some change, right? And we also need to get parents need to be involved, right? I'm in charge of my children. They need to be in charge of theirs. And if they can't, we'll put handcuffs on them and send them to jail.
Yeah. Chief, what exactly was the tipping point as it, I guess, evolved into a situation where you needed to initiate a chase of this vehicle? I guess what exactly was that sort of?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So I was actually on my way into work. And on my way in, at some point I turned on my radio in my squad car, and I turned on my radio, and I heard something that I couldn't completely understand, and so I had to ask for some clarification. I'm hearing a stolen vehicle that people jumped out of and attacked somebody with masks on. I'm hearing that we're being chased, and I'm hearing that they're throwing items at our squad cars. And for a second there, I had to take a moment to try and figure out, did I actually hear what I heard? We don't get chased. Let's be clear on that. We don't get chased. We do the chasing. There's no way I'm going to allow anybody in this community, one, to antagonize our officers, two, to antagonize our community. And if they're antagonizing us and trying to ram our squad cars, and they're trying to throw items, weights, at our officers who come in here every day and leave their family behind to protect this community, a decision had to be made at that moment, right? And so when I heard that, I said, absolutely not. We need to get vehicles in that area, and we need to get that vehicle stopped, right? And there's a lot of thoughts that go behind that in those split seconds that has to happen. But the thing that I knew is we have a situation that if we don't stop right now, based on what I'm hearing, something horrible is going to happen. So the right decision was made. After that point, we had supervisors working that called for the necessary equipment, spikes to be deployed, and supervisors got out there. As a matter of fact, there was a supervisor that did the deployment of the spikes and was successful. And we were able to get the vehicle stopped without any serious injury to them, to our officers, or anybody else in the public. So I'm going to take one more.
If I could, just to follow up to that.
Go ahead.
Obviously, you were involved in the chase. You said yourself that you were in pursuit of the car at one point. I mean, there's the picture of everyone around you know, with the officers and stuff like that.
I wasn't in pursuit.
You were not in pursuit?
I was not in pursuit.
Okay. When you arrived on the scene, what is your initial feeling then?
When I arrived on the scene to where it ended, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Man, I was happy. I was happy. I saw our team of officers converging on a vehicle and taking these, I'm gonna be careful with the word I'm gonna use right now, but these menace to society being taken into custody. I see them refusing to cooperate with the police, and I see officers use great restraint and professionalism and get them in custody, get them in cars, get them to the hospital where I went to after that, and there's still the professionalism I seen there, given everything we saw, and then all them juveniles and the 2 adults being brought back to the station, and then again, our fantastic detectives and our GPAC unit, the Greater Peoria Auto Crime Task Force, just doing a phenomenal job behind the scenes, and officers that were on the scenes writing reports and the investigation that happened right then thereafter. So thank you. Appreciate you being here.